Hey guys, I wanted to do a quick run through for the final exam review. I'm going to go through the review sheet that I emailed to you guys. So use this in conjunction with the review sheet, and you should be well prepared for the test. The test will look exactly like the last one, it'll just cover business organizations. There'll be some fill in the blank short answer and a few multiple choice questions. It will not be very long. If you guys watch this video and go through the review sheet, you should be absolutely fine. Okay, so obviously we have the four or three or four. I kind of group LLCs and corporations together with some important distinctions. But the three or four major forms of business organization: sole proprietorship, partnership, corporation, and LLC. The thrust of the exam will be with regard to corporations, no question about that. But make sure you know each of the forms of business organization. What are the advantages and disadvantages of each? You have an entire lecture on that here on YouTube, so that shouldn't be any problem. Remember, those four main factors are ease of creation, the liability of the owners, the need for capital, and tax considerations. Be prepared to list the four factors in deciding which form of business organization should be chosen. So if we talk about corporations, obviously the big thing is corporations, separate legal person, have constitutional rights. For example, as we talked about, a First Amendment right with regard particularly to advertising. But that limited liability is very important. So you may see a question that says something like, John has significant assets, has a bunch of money, he wants to open a new business, but he's concerned about his liability. What form of business organization should he choose? And the answer would be corporation, because again, main advantage, practically the sole reason for having corporations is the limited liability of the owners. Make sure you know that the board of directors runs a corporation. Know that when a corporation returns money to shareholders, it's called a dividend. Know that one of the problems with corporations is double taxation. That corporations can own property. The owners are called shareholders or stakeholders. Shareholders would be the better term. Just like a natural person, separate legal entity. We put in nonprofit corporations. Remember, people start nonprofit corporations. They organize as a corporation for the same reason anybody else does, which is to limit their liability. Corporations can own property. They can file lawsuits. They can be sued in their corporate name. Okay. We talked about LLCs. Remember that LLCs have the same limited liability that corporations do. That the owners of an LLC are called members. The owners of an LLC are not called shareholders. They're called members. You'll definitely see a question on the test. The owners of an LLC are called what? And the answer will be members. Remember that LLCs can take advantage of flow-through taxation. So they have the option of filing a tax return in the name of the LLC, or if their individual rate it will be lower than the LLC rate, they can take advantage of flow-through taxation and report income from the LLC on their individual tax returns and pay their individual rate. Again, that's called flow-through taxation, one of the advantages and main reasons for being for an LLC. I want you to know the characteristics of a close corporation, okay? And those four characteristics are shareholders that know each other or are family. Number two, there are no market for shares. Number three, there are restrictions on the sale of shares. And number four, there is a small number of shareholders. We talked about a situation where the owners of a corporation, the shareholders, can lose their limited liability if they don't adhere to the corporate formalities or they commingle funds. Commingling of assets is the major reason why shareholders could, under certain circumstances, lose their limited liability. And when they lose that limited liability, we call that piercing the corporate veil. You will definitely see questions on piercing the corporate veil. And just remember, piercing the corporate veil means the owners, the shareholders, lose their limited liability. And one of the main reasons for courts taking that drastic action, which again is rare, is because of a commingling of assets between the owners and the corporation. Again, you have to have that separation between the corporation and its shareholders, because the corporation is a separate legal person. We talked about a fiduciary duty that is owed among partners in a partnership and typically in close corporations as well. It is the utmost duty of good faith and fair dealing. It requires somebody who has a fiduciary duty to subordinate their own personal interests to that of the close corporation or the partnership. We talked about classifications of corporations. Foreign corporations, domestic corporations, and alien corporations. And this isn't hard, but it's a little bit tricky. So you'll see some multiple choice questions that say, for example, a corporation incorporated in West Virginia and doing business in West Virginia is known in West Virginia as a domestic corporation. A corporation incorporated in West Virginia but doing business in Pennsylvania is known in Pennsylvania as a foreign corporation. A corporation incorporated outside of the United States is known in the United States as an alien corporation. Okay, so you're looking at two things to determine whether it's a foreign, domestic, or alien corporation. Number one, what is the state of incorporation? Number two, the question will identify where that corporation is doing business. So you look at those two things. So again, a West Virginia corporation doing business in West Virginia is known in West Virginia as a domestic corporation. A West Virginia corporation, in other words, incorporated in West Virginia, but doing business in Pennsylvania or any other state other than West Virginia, is known in that other state, in Pennsylvania, as a foreign corporation. And a corporation incorporated outside of the United States but doing business in the United States is an alien corporation. Okay, let me pull up one more thing. Give me here just a minute to make sure I've gone through everything. And again, call me or email me or whatever you need to as far as any questions that you may have. This might take me a minute to bring up. Bear with me. And then I want to go through, give you some guidance on the extra credit. Well, there's been a little bit of confusion about that. Here we go. All right, so definitely be prepared to list characteristics of a close corporation. Be prepared for a question that talks about somebody protecting their personal assets and what type of business organization should they form. Be able to tell me what the owners of a corporation are called. Make sure you can list a disadvantage of organizing a business as a corporation, and double taxation would be the obvious answer. So if you see a question, list one disadvantage of organizing a business as a corporation. I'm looking for double taxation. Know that the owners of an LLC are called members. Know that the board of directors is responsible for the overall management of a corporation. Know that when someone attempts to reach the personal assets of an owner of a corporation, or in other words, to get around the limited liability of the owners of a corporation, it is called pierce the corporate veil. Know that the duty of utmost good faith and fair dealing is a fiduciary duty. Be prepared for multiple choice questions on foreign, domestic, and alien corporations. Know that flow-through taxation is an advantage of an LLC. Know that a corporation is a separate legal entity. Know that a corporation has constitutional rights. Know that when the corporation returns money to shareholders, it's called a dividend. And know that the commingling of funds is the most important factor in deciding whether or not to pierce the corporate veil. If you're prepared for all those things, you should do fabulously on the final. Okay, let's talk about the extra credit real quick. I'm looking for a page, 2 pages, double spaced. Don't give me these crazy margins. You won't get full credit if you do that. It's got to be a full page or two. And all I'm asking you to do is come up with a business you'd like to own. It doesn't matter what it is. So paragraph number 1 of the extra credit should be, I would like to open up this type of business, and this is why I'm interested in this, or this is why I have chosen to open this type of business. Paragraph 2 should be, if I open this business as a sole proprietor, these will be the factors I'll have to consider. So go through each of the 4 factors with regard to a sole proprietorship in paragraph number 2. Ease of creation, liability of owners, need for capital, and tax considerations with regard to a sole proprietorship. In paragraph number 2, go through the advantages and disadvantages of a partnership. Ease of creation, again, the 4 factors: ease of creation, tax considerations, need for capital, liability of owners with regard to a partnership in paragraph 2. Paragraph 3. In paragraph 4, do the same thing with regard to corporations. If I open this business as a corporation, these will be the advantages and the disadvantages, and go through the 4 factors with regard to a corporation. In paragraph 5, tell me which type of business organization you've decided to open based upon the previous paragraphs and the advantages and the disadvantages and the 4 factors in deciding what type of business organization is appropriate for the business that you've come up with. That's all I'm asking for, okay? You can, if you just Google business organizations, advantages and disadvantages, you're going to find all sorts of information, including charts that give you all the information you need to do this. It's a relatively simple assignment, but I will read them and I will grade them a little bit tougher because I've given you the exact format of exactly what you need to do. But again, that's worth 30 extra point, a possibility of 30 extra credit points. If you do it perfectly, you'll get 30 points. If you do it imperfectly, you'll get less than 30 points, okay? Many of you need to do that to get your grade up. So again, if you have any questions about that, give me a call, shoot me an email, text, whatever, and I'll go through it with you. All right, this will be my last video for business law. All we've got to do is get that final out of the way, get your extra credit papers turned in by the date of the final. Again, the final will be Thursday. I'll get you the final by 8 or 9 o'clock. I know some of you requested it early, so I'll try and get it out by 8. And then I'll give you till 11 o'clock that day to get it back to me. Okay? So again, call me with any questions or concerns you might have. I wish we could have spent more time together as a class, but we've done pretty good shifting to online. It's been a little bit of a different way of doing things for me. You know, I like to ask you guys questions and have a lot of class participation. So that aspect of it has been difficult, but I've been pleased with how you guys have responded. You've all done really well. I sure appreciate it. And good luck to all you guys on the final. I'll get those finals graded. If I have time, I'll do it like I did last time. I'll just grade them as they come in. And I'll try and get your final grades to you as soon as possible, but cut me a little slack. It's a lot of work, and I want to make sure I get it right, so I double and triple check it, but I've got to get your final grades and then calculate that with everything else. If you never did assignment number 3, of which there are some of you, I'll take it. I mean, it's another 5 points added to your grade. If you haven't done it and you still want to do assignment number 3, you should have it. Most of you did it, but there's probably 5 or 6 that didn't. So I will continue to give you the option of turning that in. For some of you, it could be the difference between an A or a B or a B and a C. So if you're so inclined, go ahead and get that done. All right, guys. Adios.